Rebuilding trust after infidelity. That's our topic for today. It's a big one. If you have been cheated on and you want to stay in a relationship, I've heard thousands of women and men discuss, Dr. Weiss, how do I trust them again? How do I give myself totally to them again? How does that work? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. If you haven't subscribed, please do get to that button and click it. We have so many helpful videos for you. Also, if you have a question, put it in the box and we will get to you as soon as possible. Well, how do you rebuild trust again after you've been cheated on? Let's take this step by step, because it will usually depend on your disclosure that you got up front. If they got caught, that's going to be different than if they just had some kind of epiphany, broke down, and told you everything. Or if they just tell you a little bit and it keeps dribbling and dribbling and dribbling as you pressure for more. Those are all three different scenarios. Okay, the person who got caught is going to be challenging because they weren't honest to begin with. The person who was like totally just broken and shared everything, 2 or 3 hours worth of stuff, and it came out, the porn, the people, the situations, what kind of scenarios they got themselves in, whether they were relationships, one-night stands, prostitutes, sex services, whatever it was, on the computer, however they did it. Then the person who kind of feels guilty enough to tell you about one, because maybe you crossed the line, but doesn't give you all the backstory about the pornography, about the masturbation, about what's going on. So how do you get started? Now, before I say that, let me tell you who I am. I'm Dr. Doug Weiss. I'm the president of the American Association for Sex Addiction Therapy. I am the executive director of Heart to Heart Counseling Center in Colorado Springs. And for the last 40 years, I have helped people who have cheated to rebuild their relationships. I've helped him whether he has a sex addiction or not. I've helped her if she's the offender and or if she's the addict, either one. I have helped the wife and the husband, and I've helped the marriages. Our model is the person who commits the fidelity gets better, the spouse gets better, and the marriage gets better. All three working at one. You do not necessarily want to know every detail, every thought, because that will probably cause a lot of harm. She was wearing a pink dress, or he bought me a nice dinner and then we did. Okay, you can go down that road, but I can tell you why you might want to consider not. You want the facts. When it started, maybe who it involved, when it stopped. Have you had communication since? Once you get into details, they have those details in an altered state. So for them, if they're not in that altered state, they will forget most of those details. Okay? For you, you're not in an altered state when you get that information, and you will remember those details really until death, because they're part of your main memory. It's kind of like they did this study with college students. They put them on amphetamines to study, and in one group, they let them have amphetamines to take the test, and they did very well because they were still in the same altered state. In the second group, they put them on amphetamines, and then after that, they let them take the test without amphetamines, and they failed because the information that they studied was in an altered state. So how do we get to the baseline? Because it's hard to trust those big blue eyes or green eyes or brown eyes or whatever color eyes they have, because they lied to you straight up. Look, you right now, I did life with you together, let you work hard, let you parent together, all this stuff while they were doing infidelity. So how do you put trust back in that person? Well, first of all, let's go to facts, and then we're going to talk about rebuilding. The facts are really good to establish. I have a DVD called Disclosure, and it goes through the different types of disclosure. And I want to get rid of the myth that there's such a thing as full disclosure, because not every single detail is going to be there. Because some of them they'll actually forget. I know guys who've been free for 2 or 3 years and all of a sudden something download to them. But the main information is available enough for them to do a polygraph test. Verify. When someone does a 5-day intensive in our office, they have an opportunity to do a polygraph test on Monday so that we can establish a fact base. Because if you're saying, trust me with no facts, what that says to the other person is, I'm going to get away with this again. I'm not going to be accountable for what I actually do. And I want you to suck up all the pain. And I'm going to be a good boy or girl for a while. And then I'm going to go back to do whatever I do, because the only consequence I have is sit in the counselor's office for a while and lie to them and lie to you and do whatever I want. We have this saying, People protect what they love, and they love what they protect. If you're protecting the secret world, you're not protecting your spouse who's trying to rebuild trust. If you're willing to do a polygraph test, you are seriously committed to rebuilding trust. And if not, you're not committed to rebuilding trust. You're saying, I'll break the window, but I'm not going to pay for it. So a polygrapher, now not every state regulates them, so you might want to call a few criminal attorneys, or come do an intensive, not only do the polygraph and get the facts, but get some healing for her, for him, and for the marriage. Okay, but the polygraph has been instrumental in saving thousands of marriages because the offending person knows they're going to get caught. And they know the questions about any communication with that person, any grooming of new people. They know they're going to get those questions in the future because usually you take one, they take another one in a quarter, and then 6 months and 6 months. And that way you have a 2-year running of not living in the secret world. And why is that important? Because when someone gets into infidelity or addiction or both, they are spiritually, emotionally immature. And so they can't feel this deep empathy. They think like a 14-year-old, like they're cheating on their girlfriend, not someone they actually said, I commit my whole life to you, forsaking all others. They're not a mature person. Staying clean that long gets them mature, and they can have those full faculties back. And I've seen amazing people change and become able to do life as a mature perspective. So it can be done. Now, the polygraph questions are factual. They're not intent. So they would be straight up, and since married, I've had sex acts with blank number of people, starting blank, ending blank. Okay? Masturbation frequency, pornography frequency over the last couple of years. Because if there's a sexual addiction under this and the sex addiction is not taken care of, they might stop cheating for a while, but the addiction will lead them back to going back to those behaviors because it's part of their addiction. The infidelity is part of their addiction. And so that has to be figured out as well. Have you had communication with any person that you've had sex with outside of marriage? And if it's a future polygraph, have you started to have any inappropriate communication with anyone outside of marriage? So that you can actually not only get the facts, but you can rebuild trust over time. Now that by itself is not going to rebuild trust. It is the safety net so that trust can be established. Now we have to rebuild integrity inside the marriage. You have to rebuild intimacy, emotionally, spiritually. So what you do is we have exercises called the 3 Dailies, and you can email my office, and they'll send you the feelings list that has rules for couples. It's a real simple exercise. You share 2 feelings a day. You learn how to identify and communicate feelings together, and you start rebuilding emotional intimacy. Spiritually, you start praying together and connecting. And thirdly, you start giving praises to one another. And so these exercises can help reestablish trust if you're consistent with them. Thirdly, you want to establish structure in your marriage. You need time together. You need to go on dates, either once a week or every other week. Rotate who decides what we do on the date. Make sure the dating is happening, because otherwise you're in a functionship, not a relationship. You need time for relationship. Okay, if you're able to be sexual at this point, then set up some kind of understanding on how much frequency that's going to be, who's going to initiate, and work that out. And a lot of this is in all our recovery material. The book Intimacy 100-Day Guide to Lasting Relationships is a good marriage book for just the structures of your relationship. You want to do the healing work. The person who committed the infidelity needs to be able to find out why and work on the why. All right? If they got abuse, trauma, family of origin stuff, whatever, they need to do that piece. And the spouse also, you need to do the work that's in your life. The damage of this is PTSD, depression, self-esteem, being blown out, weight gain, all these things. You want to figure out what your piece is. And there's a whole book on partner betrayal trauma that can go through some of the symptoms you might be experiencing, but you want to do your recovery. Highest recommendation, do the materials and also be in groups. We have phone groups for people all over the world, so you can get support or find out if there's someone in your area that has those groups by calling 719-278-3708. Now, there's the marriage piece, doing the exercises together. There's his work, her work. My strongest recommendation is, if you can afford it, is to do a 5-day intensive in our office so that all 3 of those pieces have a plan. Trying to do this kind of recovery from infidelity by yourself is the longest, hardest way to do it. It is best to push really hard in the beginning, find out what needs to be done, have a plan for what's going to be done, do the polygraph, get it monitored, and then periodically do that polygraph once a quarter to verify that things are going well, and stay in couples counseling and individual counseling, at least for the first quarter. To get through that first quarter is really important, and then decide what you need thereafter. But if you're in support groups, as part of that, you can lower the amount of counseling and move to the support groups for accountability to do the things that are needed in your particular situation. And I say that because infidelity has a spectrum, and the personalities involved, and the history involved, the finances that are involved, the children that are involved, the social structure around you, the spiritual structure around you, all of those have variables that need to be considered. So there's no cookie cutter way to rebuild trust. I'm giving you some basic principles. If you need help personally, whether you're the person who did it or the person who was hurt by it, you both need help, because the trauma of this event can be life-changing. And if you heal closer to that trauma point, you will have less consequences. And if you don't, you can have consequences for your whole life. So my encouragement, and I've seen thousands of couples, 5,000 couples, and I've seen most of them stay together, work it out, figure it out. Now there's some, they don't want to do the work. Some want to keep doing whatever they're doing. Some want to just have some kind of weird arrangement that one person may or may not be able to accept. But here's the thing, you can find that all out. Do intensives, make a phone call, do some phone counseling, do what you need to do to invest in your situation. Even if the other person doesn't want to get better, you can. Well, I hope this has been helpful. If you need anything, you can contact our office. If you haven't subscribed, trust me, we have a lot on these topics. Okay, courses on YouTube can help you. Lots of books, information, workbooks, all that kind of stuff, DVDs. We are the experts in this field, so please take advantage of all that information. Subscribe. If you have a question, put it in the box, and hopefully we'll see you again.